Welcome in, everyone, to another episode of Paul Talks Ball, and it is great to be here today. Thanks to the people of Pro Football Focus, a beautiful studio down here in Over the Rhine, Cincinnati, and I am joined by the voice of FC Cincinnati, Tom Gelehrter. Tommy G, it is great to be with you.
Oh, it's great to be here. I mean, beautiful studio, beautiful location, right across the street from TQL Stadium, which has seen some pretty awesome moments this summer. And, glad to catch up with you always.
Yeah, absolutely. You and I, over the years, it's been really fun to see the development of this team now a decade into this, which is crazy, right? I came to Cincinnati in 2015 as a freshman at Xavier and have kind of followed this entire journey from the outside, but always talking to you from the insider perspective of what this has been like for the city. I want to talk a little bit more about that at the end of the show. But for people here, what we're going to do over the next 40 minutes or so is give people an impression of what you can look forward to in the second half of this season. Because as we record this right now, not sure when all of you are watching this, but as we record this right now, FC Cincinnati's top of the table. And it's a couple of days before the Hell is Real match against the Crew on Saturday night right here at FC at the stadium right behind us at TQL Stadium. So, Tommy, let's start there. Let's start with what this season has been like overall for FC Cincinnati. Anybody that maybe hasn't seen a match yet but is tuning in for the second half of the season. We'll get into the particulars. But from an overall perspective, what's this season been like for you?
Well, first and foremost, hopefully whenever folks are tuning in, whether it's in a couple of days, in a couple of weeks, in a month, if they tune in that far away, FC Cincinnati's still in first place whenever they tune in the entire league. That would mean that they continue to win. The biggest thing about this team is they found ways to get results this year, Paul. And it hasn't always been easy. A lot of one-goal wins, which have been the calling card under head coach Pat Noonan since he arrived in 2022. But this is a head coach who's taken a team to the playoffs 3 straight years. Now it looks like it's going to be a 4th consecutive season. Certainly should be. Of course, a couple years ago, had the team on the verge of MLS Cup final after a loss, or right before a loss, in very disappointing fashion. But this is a team that has come in. They retooled a couple of positions. They added some depth. But they've had some injuries this year. They lost Miles Robinson for a big stretch as he was out with the U.S. men's national team. And they've had to overcome some adversity, especially, the halfway point fell right at the international break at the beginning of June. And they kind of stumbled into the break. And it was really disappointing, especially because they weren't playing Philadelphia, Columbus, Miami going into the break. They were winnable games that ended up as losses or draws and points dropped. And, man, I think there was a lot of frustration. Fans were frustrated. Front office was frustrated. Coaches were frustrated. Players were frustrated. And they had a lot of time to think about it and a lot of extra training sessions to get ready, and they've come flying out since then. So the results are there. I think they have the right pieces. Again, depending on when people listen and watch and tune into this, there may be new pieces in by the time folks are tuning in, because the window opens up on July 24th. So I think that Chris Albright's working really hard to improve the team, and I'm pretty excited about what the second half of this season holds, because I think it's a team that should compete for a Supporters' Shield, should be in a position to have a great playoff run, and hopefully the season doesn't end until December, and it involves MLS Cup.
You said a lot of things right there in that answer that I want to break down, and I want to start by what FC Cincinnati has done from a goal-scoring perspective and winning these matches, because like you said, it's been a calling card under these Noonan teams that they're nail-biters, they're exciting to watch,
heart pills,
they're a lot of fun, they're an adrenaline rush for fans in the stands, and it's a lot of one-goal games. I believe right now FC Cincinnati top of the table with a +6 goal differential.
Yeah, it's not the highest goal differential by any. I mean, there's teams that are in 8th and 9th place who have a very similar goal differential. And I've had this conversation with some of the commentators for Apple TV and some of the other experts I talk with during the season, and it's interesting because there's 2 sides to the coin, right? The one-goal games mean that FC Cincinnati can't put a team away, or does it mean they know how to win close games, and that's a big positive, right?
Yeah.
I think the argument is that they know how to do it. They've done it way better than anybody else in Major League Soccer over the last 3 seasons, including this one. So it's not even close, which leads me to believe that Pat Noonan's coaching this team in a way that they know how to close it out. Sure, do we all wish that they were by 2-3 goals and we could breathe a little bit and not need those heart pills at the end of matches? Sure, everybody wishes that, right? It doesn't matter what sport we're talking about. You wish some comfort in your team's victory. FC Cincinnati hasn't really had that this year, and I'm not really concerned about it. I think that it shows the character, it shows the grit, it shows the ability. They aren't losing many one-goal games, and if they were, I'd probably be more concerned.
Yeah, and the way that FC Cincinnati has won some of these 2-1 matches, especially, right, when you're coming down to the wire, you look at what just happened this past weekend right here at home, another 2-1 win. Do you feel like the way that this is trending right now from goal scoring offensively, do you like the way things are going right now? You look at Evander, you look at Kevin Denke, right? A couple of really solid pieces. But outside of those two, do you want more offensively?
Well, and I think that's part of this conversation about the transfer window, right? And what's Chris Albright going to bring in? I think and I believe, and an attacking piece is probably in the works, but it has to be the right fit. It has to fit the salary cap constraints that the team has right now. It has to fit the roster constraints, supplemental roster versus senior roster, international spots, so on and so forth. So there's a lot of hurdles, and I think things that Chris Albright, general manager, has to work through to make a piece fit. It also has to be a right culture piece, and that's what they've always been about, right? Like, they've got to make sure the guy's going to fit in the dressing room, because the chemistry is awfully good right now with what FC Cincinnati have going on. But I think an attacking piece coming in, I think a big question with Obina Wobodo now being out for a couple of months. Hopefully it's not a season-ending injury, but they got to get some depth in the midfield. But you asked about attacking, and I think they need one more attacking piece to come in and join the mix. Denke and Evander have been as advertised. Every penny that Carl Lindner and his ownership group threw at Chris Albright to go get those two guys has been a great investment. Yeah. I mean, Evander's in the MVP race. There's no question he might be the leading candidate. For my money, he is at the moment in the MVP race. Kevin Denke's been fantastic. They're both going to be in that Golden Boot race, at least it appears, right now with the way that they're performing. So I think everybody should feel really good and really enthusiastic about the way that those guys are playing. And then I think the question is, you're right, who else is scoring goals? Is Kai Kamara getting in on the mix? And he's been good in helping stretch the defense. He only has an assist so far as of this recording. Hopefully, again, by the time people are watching, he has a goal, and hopefully it came against the Columbus Crew, the first team he ever played for. But he's stretching defenses, right? And that gives Evander more room to work. And that's been fun to watch. So I think that there's a lot of the right pieces in there, but I think still probably missing one attacking piece will be really beneficial for what Pat Noonan's trying to do. And maybe it pushes some of those 2-1 games to 3-1 and so on and so forth. And look, Yuya Kubo hasn't been healthy. Sergio Santos hasn't been healthy recently. And those are a couple of pieces that can come on late in matches if Kai Kamara is starting, because Kai's plan coming in, at least from the start, was more as a late match reserve, and now he's been more of a starter. So I think there'll be opportunity for different guys to contribute, and I think it's exciting to watch. Pavel Buka's been involved and had some good looks. I think Luca Orshano, he got his first goal a couple weeks ago, and certainly will be hungry for more. So no, I think a lot of the right pieces are there, but probably just one attacking piece away from being complete in that regards.
You look at the injuries that FC Cincinnati has sustained this season, and two of the biggest ones you mentioned in Wobodo, but also Nick Hagland, who, being on the latter end of his career.
Xavier guy asking about Nick Hagland.
Xavier, that's right. You knew I was going to slip it in. You knew where I was going there. But Nick Hagland, on the latter end of his career, but having maybe his best season as a professional, or at least certainly one.
Don't tell Nick it's on the latter end right now.
Or at least certainly in the conversation for his best season. And this is somebody who's won an MLS Cup in Toronto, extremely talented defender,
right?
And somebody that this season you could clearly see as the beginning stages of the season was going along, watching these matches night in and night out, it was so obvious how much they were relying on Nick's quality of play, and to see him, one, just personally suffer another injury after everything he's been through, that alone is just, it's so tough to see. But at the same time, from what FC Cincinnati was trying to do as a unit, and to lose his quality there, that is a tough one to have to sustain. So how do you think they've been able to manage it? I believe Nick is working his way back to return to play here relatively soon. And again, maybe by the time you're watching this, maybe he's back.
He's back playing.
Maybe he's back
absolutely.
on the pitch.
Right.
But trying to navigate these waters without those two, and especially in Nwobodo as well, who, like we said, hopefully isn't done for the season, may be done for the season. We'll see.
Right.
But those are two massive injuries, Tommy.
They really are. And let's start with Nick. He's as good of a dude as they come. You know it. I know it. We both have relationships with him, from different, as our paths have crossed through life, right? And sometimes those cross over. I mean, Nick is an unbelievable ambassador for this city, for the club, for the sport, for youth sports. I mean, he does it all, and he's a great guy to boot. And so to watch him have back-to-back season-ending injuries, and I remember the one at TQL Stadium last year, and my heart sunk. It was almost like you have that lump in your throat where you almost they're stretching him off, and you're like, this could be it. Mm-hmm. How do you come back? You know what I mean? Both mentally and physically, right? To be able to have the fortitude to come back from that. And I remember him walking. I mean, I got goosebumps now just talking about it. But I had chills, and I literally kind of just stopped talking, which is unusual for me, And I was like, they're carrying Nick off, and he's kind of giving a thumbs up to the crowd, and it was this amazingly emotional moment where you didn't know, will Nick wear that kit again in this building? And of course he did. And you're right, he was playing some of his best soccer that he's played for FC Cincinnati and helped the team. And I talked about that slide at the end of May going into the break. A lot of goals were conceded after he went off in that game in Atlanta when he got hurt. And the way the ball was being played in that game, at first I honestly thought it was a non-contact injury because I just saw him out of the corner of my eye. I'm watching the ball over here, and I see him go down, and I thought he cut and did a knee. I didn't see the collision that took him out, and my heart sunk again. There's no way that 3 years in a row this is going to happen to this guy, and still a very, very serious and kind of life injury there with the punctured lung and everything and the broken ribs. But man, what a great! I mean, I've been talking to him at training because he'll come by and say hi, and what a great attitude he has, and he's so anxious to be back out on the pitch and help this team and heal up and be ready to contribute once again. So the great news is that he's not out for the season, right? And that we're going to see Nick back soon, in orange and blue.
Watching the Apple TV broadcast the other night against Chicago, and you see him up in the box. They show a shot of him up in the box, and you can just he's dying to be out there, playing a season like he was playing, especially you're top of the table, you're a team competing for the MLS Cup. You want to bring that home to your home city, and you feel powerless up there. It really, to me, I'm very interested to see how his second half of the season is going to go, and maybe the inspiration that he has from saying, hey, I've made it back again, and let's see what we can put out there for the last couple months.
I mean, again, going to the kind of guy he is, they do a transfer game on match day -1, day before the match every week. And there's 3 teams. There's a gray team, there's a green team, and there's a pink team, and Nick is on the green team. And the gray team wins a lot. They have all the designated players and the biggest stars. The pink team is all the young kids, and the green team is some of the guys in between, right? And Nick's on the green team. And the green team won, and right after he got hurt, held up the green penny. But Nick hasn't been able to participate yet, but he's been wearing the green penny when they're doing it, whether he's running on the side pitch or he's riding the bike back inside of the gym. He always has that green pitch on, or that green penny on, while watching his guys out there. So he's there with them, and they all know that. So Nick will be back. That's great. Hopefully he'll be in Nwobodo. You asked about Obi too. Hopefully we'll see Obi back. That's the big question mark. He had surgery earlier this week, so early July. They said a couple months. They kind of had to get in there and see what it looked like with the quadriceps injury. And that's a really tough one. But there's also few guys on this team tougher than Obinna Nwobodo. This is a guy who will work his tail off to find a way back into a match in 2025. So if there is a way, and if there's a guy who could find his way through the rehab and do everything he needs to do, that's Obinna Nwobodo. So it'll be interesting to kind of see where that lands. Hopefully he doesn't end up on the season-ending injury list, but he's, I think Chris Albright said it, he's 1 of 1. There's nobody really like him. And I remember when he came in 2022, and now he's been here. This is his 4th season. And you could tell right away that he worked really hard and that he was really talented. And the crazy part was that you would see him in games, and he would miss some tackles, right? Everybody missed tackles. And then you turn around, the ball's off your foot, and guys are like, 5 missed me. How does 5 have the ball? because he would miss you, then he'd come back and make the challenge and not foul you. And that's just speaks to the type of player he is. If someone is brought in this window, it's not going to be a like for like. You're not going to be able to pull that off. But you got to get some depth there and somebody else who can help. Brian Anunga's done a good job so far, and they'll get somebody else in. And like I said, hopefully, imagine bringing Obi back in October.
Yeah.
For a couple games to
sure.
close out the regular season, you're chasing seeding, maybe you're chasing the supporter shield, and you could bring Obina Wobodo back into the mix, and then you have him for the playoffs potentially in form. That would be pretty cool. So we'll see what happens there. But look, adversity is what makes teams, and that's true across all sports. And how you overcome that adversity, and FC Cincinnati have had their fair share of it this year to try to battle through.
The injuries. Miles Robinson going over to play for the national team on that break. How do you think Pat Noonan has done navigating all of these challenges this season?
Yeah, Coach of the Year in 2023 when the team won the Supporter Shield, and rightfully so. I think if the success continues the rest of the way, that he has to be back in that conversation. It was kind of funny in 2023. They do team of the match day and there's a coach of the match day. And I don't know how many weeks Pat had to go. It was something obscene without winning coach of the match day. And I'm like, this team just keeps winning. The team's been in first place in the entire league for weeks. Like, what does coach have to do? And finally, and I asked him about it at one point. He was like, Tommy, that's the least of my concerns. And I knew that was his answer, right? But sometimes you ask questions you already know the answer to. That's what we do in this business. But still he deserves that recognition. And in a week or two ago, he got that recognition, right, from the league with Coach of the Match Day. I think he'll be in the mix for Coach of the Year, and should be, because it hasn't been easy. Look, he lost Lucho Acosta, the 2023 MVP. Bring in a new player, granted in Evander, who's been an MVP candidate, but you got to make all these pieces fit. A new left wing back in Lucas Engel, who's played at center back. I think Pat has been fantastic, and I think that statement is true in 2022, and 2023, and 2024, and now in 2025. In the way that he's had to juggle his lineup, he doesn't make brash decisions and kind of flip things on its head. He's very calculated in the way he goes about it with his staff, and I think it's been impressive.
From Noonan and Albright to bring this team to a level now where they are consistently in the conversation for the Supporter Shield and as a top competitor for the MLS Cup. What have been the biggest changes that you have seen as you have followed this entire, team progression from day one to where they are now? What stands out about Albright and Noonan that was different from years past, that now that they have, taken this team to where they are?
Well, I think it's kind of two parts, because Pat very much manages the dressing room and the lineup decisions and things along those lines, and Chris is very much managing the players who are in that dressing room, right, and the folks who are coming in and the pieces. But they're working hand in hand, right? They have to be. I think that's a big advantage, right? You have your coach and your GM very much on the same page, doing the right things. Pat said from the minute he stood over there at his first press conference, I got to get the culture right. And I think he has, maybe more so this year than any year. It feels like it's a cohesive group and not, small little different sections. And listen, you see it in college basketball, you see it probably in pro football, you see it in pro soccer. Look, clicks. That's just how things happen, right? Like offensive linemen all go out together on a football team, and that's just kind of how these things go. But I think the team is really close, so I think he took care of the culture from the jump. I think Chris has made really good moves since he arrived and managed the salary cap. Major League Soccer has a very complicated roster structure. That's just the reality. Every team has to deal with it. Some teams deal with it better than others. But you brought in Chris Albright, who learned in Philadelphia from one of the best, and Philadelphia managed the teams and had a lot of success there without the resource that he has here. And he played in the league, right? He grew up in the league, and he has seen every angle of it. And I think he uses that experience to bring in the right pieces. Is every signing a home run? Well, no, but find me a GM who says that, and I'll find you a liar, right? There's no GM who's going to say, I've hit a home run in everybody I've ever signed. That just doesn't happen in any sport. But no, I think he's done really well there. He has that chemistry and that friendship and that relationship with Pat Noonan. that the two of them are on the same page, which is huge. And then Pat's managed the dressing room. And I think the way in which he manages it, which is probably similar in some ways to how he manages things publicly with the media. Like, there's not a lot of games in what he sits in his press conference and shares with people, right? Are there times that they may not have all the information and, they're still trying to figure out, all right, what's the extent of Obina's injury? Sure, it could be serious, but we don't need to put that out there if we don't know it's serious yet. But I think he's very honest with his guys. I don't think guys leave and they're like, man, coach isn't shooting me straight. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, guys know their role and they know where they stand. They know they got to put in more work if they want more minutes. It's the same whether you're a 12-year-old youth baseball player. You know what I mean? Like, work hard, show up, have the right attitude. If you do that, things are going to work out for you. And I think that's a pretty good lesson for life just in general, let alone whether it's youth sports or professional sports or anywhere in between.
What makes us human? Humanity is found in the actions that redefine care. Actions that we at TriHealth take every day. By seeing those who feel invisible, hearing needs that have been ignored, TriHealth is healing the body and the human spirit, so all can know and live a better life.
Chris Albright had a big task this offseason in navigating the waters of Lucho Acosta, bringing in Evander. And I think it's worked out for all parties in the way that now FC Cincinnati has been able to utilize the talents of Evander, his goal scoring, his offensive prowess. I mean, watching him, not even just his goal scoring, but even the other night against Chicago, I go back to that match, watching just the way that he navigates the pitch, the way he sees things, the way he's able to distribute, find scores. It is really fun to watch, and to know that you have a guy like him that you can count on, it is spectacular.
It is.
And I give so much credit to that front office to be able to pull off a move like that when they identified a need. They knew they had to get something like that done. They did. And it has been so fruitful for FC Cincinnati this season. What has Evander been like to cover, and what has he meant to this team? Obviously, anybody watching this can look at the stats, but just to really dig into what the move to get Evander has meant for this team.
Yeah, well, and look, Chris Albright, pulls off the public side of it, right? But Carl Lindner and the ownership group, the credit starts there. Because you sell Lucho Acosta, your former MVP, for $5 million, right? Well, so you get $5 million to work with. No, you have $12 million. You know what I mean? Like, not many owners in Major League Soccer are going to tell you, all right, I'm going to sell you, Paul, and I'm going to replace you, and I'm going to give you twice the cash to go get the replacement. That's just the reality, right? But give credit to the ownership at FC Cincinnati to say, you know what, go get the player who can help us win a championship and who can be an MVP candidate. Because, listen, Lucho's contributions to this team while he was here are evident, right? He's the greatest player to wear that uniform for now. That argument is, there is no argument there. Like, that's just facts. But yeah, Evander's been. You got to be on. You've sat there and called games. Like, you better be on, you better be locked in and ready. Like, even the other day in that Chicago match, he scores that absolute beauty goal, and it was kind of like right in front of our broadcast location. The angle was like perfect, and Chicago just kept giving him space. And you're like, you can't assume he's going to make a pass here. Like, he's just, you could almost feel it. Like, he wants to shoot the ball. Like, he's waiting for a defender. Okay, nobody's going to step to him. Fine, I'll put it in the back of the net. And he's just, it's spectacular in the way he passes the ball. You're right, in his vision, in the way he sees the field, in some of the passes he makes in that same game. The weighted pass, to be able to make that pass across the box and put it right on the foot of Kevin Denke. Denke scores a nice goal. It's not the biggest highlight goal of his career, but he does his job there, right? But Evander to make that pass and hook it into the box that way, his skill level is just on a pretty elite level.
Yeah, you see that developing down the right side, and you're sitting there. I'm watching the match, sitting there on my couch, right? And I'm thinking to myself, man, if he can find an angle here. But sometimes when you're watching on TV, it's different than what you see on the pitch.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's really hard to try and decipher, does he have an angle here? And the funny thing is, as I watched the replay, it was great. He did have the angle, but sometimes you have to go and create that angle. You have to find an angle that maybe didn't exist.
Right.
And I just look at plays like that, and you extrapolate it over the course of a season, and you get so excited about the future of this team, what they could be, and especially, Tommy, when everybody is healthy and firing on all cylinders.
No, it's very exciting, right? Like we just talked about getting Nick Hagelin back. You know, figuring out this will be in a Wobodo piece. If he plays again this year, it's not going to be for a while, but maybe they get somebody in. Maybe they get another forward piece in, another attacking piece. Let's see some goals from Kai Kamara to get involved. Dado Valenzuela, we haven't talked about, a very young piece on this team, has 4 goals at the moment and has contributed, has a couple game-winning goals in that mix. So, listen, I think when this team is healthy, they're absolutely a contender for MLS Cup. And that's how it should be. And that's what they've built this team to be. They're going to have some difficult, and Chris spoke with the media actually this week, some difficult decisions to make after the season. Guys on options, guys without options, guys they want to bring back. Miles Robinson is in that mix. I love Miles Robinson, not just because he's a Syracuse guy, but, I love, that's an added bonus. Let's not play. Sure. But, no, Miles is awesome, and he's a joy to watch and a joy to call matches for. So I really hope he continues to wear orange and blue beyond this year, unless there's some massive opportunity for him to go somewhere overseas, right? In which case, then that's a win for everybody. But no, I think that this team is built to compete for MLS Cup, and it's never always that easy. You could have made the same argument last year, and certainly can make that argument in 2023. And they got a little bit unlucky with different circumstances. You lose Nick, you lose Matt to suspension, and you kind of ran out of steam in that game against a very good Columbus team that went on to win MLS Cup. But that's how close you are, right?
Yeah.
It's razor thin in this game. The margins in this sport and this game are so razor thin, and the playoff format in the way that it is, as you get closer, 1 goal and a team could sit back. Say you're playing in Orlando. They're a perfect example where they go up on you 1-0. Like, your opportunities to score are going to be so limited the rest of the way. In a playoff match, that could be it. Good night, and you're going home. It's a little cruel, right? Last year, we just watched it killed me. All the top seeds went out. FC Cincinnati would have had, home field through to MLS Cup. But it's exciting, and I think that the pieces are in place to make another big run come October, November.
That leads into what I was just about to ask you, and the playoff. Maybe the struggles might not be the right word, but at the same time, for a team that has MLS Cup expectations, when you're at the top of the table here, and you're looking at a team that was took home the Supporters' Shield a couple of seasons ago and has consistently built around the idea of a championship, what have been the postseason struggles for this team over the last couple of seasons? And then compared with, do you think they've addressed it to the point where this season you have those expectations and can fulfill them this year?
Yeah, I think, 2022, you go win your first ever playoff game, and then you lose to a really good Philadelphia team.
Yeah.
And, I don't think anybody felt bad about that. You feel bad if you lose a playoff game, right? Yeah. But I think that the team made it to the playoffs for the first time. They won a playoff game for the first time. Like, expectations were met in 2022. In 2023, obviously, you win the Supporters' Shield, first major trophy in Major League Soccer. You make it all the way to MLS Cup final. You're up 2-0. Like, that one hurts to the day. Like, my heart still hurts from standing there and watching it, and it'll give me night sweats, and nightmares and all of that. And I'm sure it does for others. And then last year, it's just kind of disappointing in the way, but the end of the season was kind of disappointing, right?
Yeah.
Like, they kind of limped their way into the playoffs. It didn't feel like the chemistry was great. There's a reminder. This is how I keep my entire life organized. So
it's
apologies.
Okay. It's okay.
But listen, last year you kind of limp in, and the disappointing part is that the seeds ahead of you went out, right? So you could have that path would have opened up, but sometimes it's just not meant to be for different teams for different reasons in sport. And sport is cruel in that way, and it's beautiful in the way where a team like New York Red Bulls make the big run last year, and nobody would have ever expected that to MLS Cup where they ended up falling. But no, I think that like I said, the pieces are in place to make that run. And it's a little bit, I mean, Major League Baseball is like that, right?
Yeah.
Like you get hot in October and your pitchers are locked in. You get hot in October, November in Major League Soccer and your defense is locked in. You're not giving up goals. Like this team, and people ask me all the time, like, what's the key to this match? And so often my answer starts with defense, right? If this team is as good as they can be defensively, then they're going to be in position to win. So I think that's where we're going to be, come November in those playoff games. If the defense is there, then let Kevin Denke and Evander and those guys go get goals, and that'll set up the success.
You addressed this a little bit earlier, but the transfer window upcoming here, what do you think this team really needs to do in the transfer window to position themselves even better going down the stretch?
Yeah, I think, first and foremost, first the answer was that attacking piece, right? Another forward into the mix. Now a defensive midfielder is also in the mix. So I think those two pieces already brought in a player who can play wide, a young Venezuelan who is coming into the mix.
Yep.
So he's eligible on July 24th to start playing. And then you got to get an attacking piece, I think, and a defensive midfielder. And like I said at the beginning, Chris Albright's going to be a little bit tight on cap space, a little bit tight on roster spots, but he may have to make a move, right? Maybe there's interest in somebody, there's a trade. There's different mechanisms to be able to free up some space. But certainly he's going to have to, work his magic. And we've seen it before. He's been a bit of a magician in that regards, in the way that he has worked the cap and the rules that MLS holds you to throughout his time here in Cincinnati. But I think an attacking piece and then another defensive midfielder, and this team is set up with everything that they need to make a deep run in the playoffs.
Not to go on too much of a tangent here, but it's funny hearing you say that about, the attacking piece, but also waiting on guys to come back and get healthy, because if you compare it to another team across town, the Cincinnati Reds, who trade deadline upcoming here at the end of July, and you look at some of these pieces through this Reds season that have gotten hurt, and you listen to Nick Krall say something to the effect of, we're waiting on these guys to come back, get healthy. Hunter Green's been hurt. I could go down the list.
Right.
You have to balance as a general manager. What do you want to do? What do you want to wait on for talent to come back? Or do you want to go out there, make a move, feel like this is your year, and really put all your chips in the middle of the table and say, here's what we're going to do? I know that it's not necessarily an apples-to-apples comparison with soccer and baseball, but for people watching this in Cincinnati and comparing the two situations, there are definitely similarities from an injury perspective and trying to better your team, but also realizing the amount of talent that you have that just isn't competing right now because they're hurt.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating balance to me, because as a fan, your natural reaction when you hear Nick Krall say something like, we're waiting on the hurt players to come back. As a fan, you're going, oh my goodness, there's apathy there.
No patience, right?
It's just there's no patience. But at the same time, you're, as a Cincinnati fan, hoping that the front office cares enough to go out and pursue a championship, as a lot of people around the city would talk about. I think Chris Albright is to that point where he recognizes, obviously, the talent on this team and can go out and get it.
Yeah, and that's what he said. And in his most recent press conference, he said, we're in a win now mentality. Like, we know we have the team. We know we may need a few more pieces. We have to win now. And listen, it's a little bit of an interesting sport in that you could get a guy on loan. Let's say, in a worst case scenario, they decide that Obi's not going to be able to go this year. Then they get a little bit of relief on his salary that they could use on somebody if he lands on the season-ending injury list, and nobody wishes that, but it certainly helps you then. You could get a guy on loan, from an MLS team. You could get on loan from anywhere in the world, And that's almost like a rental piece. It's almost like in Major League Baseball when you trade for somebody at the deadline who you only have for a couple months because they're going to be a free agent. You could also sign somebody who's going to be a free agent. Same kind of deal. But they could bring somebody in who's just going to be here for 3 or 4 months to help the team and fill that gap. They could also bring in guys on U22s like they did with Ender, who they see as a long-term piece. Obina Nwobodo's on a long-term deal with FC Cincinnati. So whether he's back in 2025 or to start 2026, like, he's back in orange and blue at some point. but they got to get another piece, to help there with Brian Anunga and provide some depth. Can't just run Brian and Pavel the rest of the season and never have a break for those guys. So, no, I think that the team is very much in win-now mentality. I think that comes from the very top, from ownership, and again, the support and the money that they tell Chris, hey, go get the guys, go get the pieces that we need to be successful. And, again, I've said it a couple times, but you got to give credit to ownership because not everybody does that. And not everybody says, we got to go get pieces. Well, you don't have any money to do it. Well, figure it out. You know what I mean? And sure, there's budget guys you can bring in. But Chris gets the checkbook. And it was proven during the offseason with the guys that he brought in. And, they continue to, figure out ways to work through the rules to make this team better. And I'm really excited to see, and hear, hopefully in the coming weeks, of who's coming on to help this team be better for the stretch run.
Looking at the schedule for the second half of this season, a couple more questions left here, Tommy. I know you got to run in a few minutes, so a couple more questions for you. Looking at the schedule and how it sets up heading into the playoffs, you have the Leagues Cup coming up, but from the MLS side, how do you think the schedule sets up in the back half of this season leading up to the playoffs?
Well, it's pretty good for FC Cincinnati because the FIFA Club World Cup was here, and the U.S. Women's National Team basically closed the stadium for the month of June, so there were no home games. So we had those 3 straight road games. FC Cincinnati won all 3 of them. Hallelujah, right? Starting with that Chicago match, 9 of 14 at home, so now that's 8 of 13 remaining inside the friendly confines of TQL Stadium, where the team's pretty darn good, has only lost once this season. So I think from a scheduling standpoint, that sets up nicely. This little run this week of Columbus, Miami, and then a trip to Salt Lake, which isn't an easy trip, and you're playing at altitude and so on and so forth. Not a massive favor from the schedule makers and then having to go to Miami on the back end of that, right? Miami twice in 10 days is just diabolical. Like, I remember when it came out and looking down at it, I was like that's where you stop, right? That little July stretch there. So it's not going to be easy, but I think being at home makes it a little bit easier. Those Leagues Cup games you're talking about are going to be at home, so that eliminates some travel in that window, which is certainly big. So, no, I think that I love the way the schedule sets up. After that Salt Lake trip, there's only 4 trips remaining. 2 of them are big trips, Los Angeles and Portland, which are an extra day. They train out there, get a little more acclimated to being out on the West Coast, and then you have a Red Bulls trip in there. So, I really like –
always entertaining.
Yeah, right? I mean, that's the last week of the season. I think is that decision day? I think it is. And so, you never know what you're going to get in that one. My hope is we're going to that one. Everything's already settled and seeds and supporter shit or whatever is squared away. But, no, I think the schedule's in a great spot. And, they survived that stretch of having to play a lot on the road. Yeah. So what more can you ask for than being in front of these fans and all this energy and sleeping in your own bed when you're chasing, first place in all of Major League Soccer?
You travel, you leave, you go to the match, you come back. It's a relatively quick trip, but still you're playing away. You're not in front of your home fans. You're not feeling that energy for over a month. It's almost unfathomable when you look at other sports in the United States. I mean, you don't go away for a month. That's not a thing that happens. But for FC Cincinnati, with the way you laid it all out, everything that happened here at TQL Stadium, which were phenomenal, by the way, the Club World Cup, awesome. Having the U.S. Women's National Team here, a lot of very fun events at TQL Stadium. But still, if you're an FC Cincinnati fan, you didn't get to watch your squad
35 days.
For 35 days.
That's wild.
What's that do to the mentality of a player to come back and then to feel that, like, against Chicago? I thought that was really evident in the match against Chicago, that they were feeding off of that.
Well, and it helped that you went on the road in all 3 of your games while you weren't at home. You won all 3. Yeah. So you're performing at a very high level coming back. You feel the energy. You feel the love from the hometown fans. I mean, since this building opened, and in 21, the results obviously were not there, but the fans stuck by the team, and they've been there. And it goes back 2019 at Nippert Stadium when the team wasn't very good in the inaugural season, and the fans were there, and it goes all the way back to 2016 when everybody showed up, and you're like, 13,000 people for the first ever match, and then 17,000 for that Louisville match, and obviously Crystal Palace and the Open Cup run of 2017 and the great success the team had in 2018. I mean, the fans have always, for 10 years, and this celebration's coming up in August, celebrating 10th anniversary. August 12th of 2015 was a day when the team was announced to join USL, and there'll be a big celebration, alumni weekend, players back. There's an alumni match. I can't wait to see that. Hopefully it's like they shorten the pitch and they shorten the time and everything to save some of these guys. I don't need to see anybody carted off in the alumni match. But I'm excited to see all those guys back. Like, that's going to be awesome. But yeah, no, it's the fans have always injected so much energy. So you talk to the guys and they're like, man, there's nowhere you'd rather play than right here at TPL Stadium.
At Payroll Partners, you're not just a number. We provide a best-in-class HR and payroll experience that's built on award-winning technology and live support customer service with a dedicated payroll specialist who's just a phone call away. You shouldn't have to choose between technology and customer service. At Payroll Partners, you get both. Locally owned and operated, visit payrollpartners.net today. That's payrollpartners.net. Deer Park Roofing has been providing elite service for homes and businesses since 1996 and leads the industry in professionalism, quality, and responsiveness. So whether your needs are residential or commercial, Deer Park can handle any job and ensure it's done right. Deer Park's motto is, protect what's important. And what's important to you is important to Deer Park Roofing. Visit deerparkroofing.com today. deerparkroofing.com.
To wrap this interview up over the next 4 or 5 minutes, I want to give you an opportunity here to build off of what you just said and your experience with the club and seeing the rise of popularity of soccer in the city of Cincinnati. I know they didn't win the bid for the World Cup, but still to be even in position to do this, you think back to 2013, 2014, there was a groundswell of soccer support, obviously, to be able to even get this in the first place. Right. But to see how much it has grown in such a short period of time, if you had told somebody in 2013 that within 10 years, you would have a soccer-specific stadium
with
in the
Bayern Munich and Dortmund playing there,
in the West End. I mean, people would have looked at you like you were crazy.
Correct.
But it's here, and it's fun. And if you haven't been to an FC Cincinnati match, I would highly encourage you to do so, because even if you're not a soccer fan, it is just such a fun – and it's one, you know exactly how much time you're going to spend there.
Correct.
It's a 2-hour – you go, you experience it, you leave. Right. But it is high energy, high intensity, and it's a lot of fun to be down there on a nice summer night, outside of then what you're watching on the pitch, which is very high quality soccer. So for you to build on what you just said and how much fun this has been, just maybe peel back the curtain on your last 10 years here in the next 4 minutes, and what some of your experiences have been like and how much fun it's been to see all of this grow.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, right? It's an experience of a lifetime to get this opportunity to narrate the last 10 years for our fans. And you're right, you would never anticipate having a soccer-specific stadium where Dortmund, where Bayern Munich are playing, where Rose Lavelle and the U.S. women's national team are playing. I mean, all of it's storybook of what the last decade has looked at. And my younger son is 10 and a half, right? Yeah, I mean, almost to the day. So his life is like the same basically as FC Cincinnati's. And he has grown up, and my older son's 3.5 years older than him. So he's at an impressionable age when the team comes on, and both of them have grown up with FC Cincinnati when you look at it, right? And they have heroes. And, I was hanging a signed jersey from Brandon Vasquez on my son's wall last night, right? That Brandon signed for him. And my son was crushed when he heard that Brandon got hurt the other night. That's his guy. You know what I mean? Like, they send each other video messages. Like, they have these heroes. And it's not just my sons, and my sons maybe have a little more access because of my role, right? But all of these kids who are playing this beautiful sport in the city of Cincinnati have these heroes. Boys, girls, all these youth soccer players. the goalkeepers love Roman Celentano, right? And that's their hero. And the strikers are loving Kevin Denke and Evander. I mean, my son was working out with a team up in Madeira one night, right? And he looks over, and Kevin Denke is standing there. They're working out on a goal across the way, like on his own. Brought, I think, one of the academy goalkeepers with him or something, so he'd have somebody to shoot on. Like, this is on a Wednesday night. He just put in an extra work, and my son goes over and talks to him. Like, they all have these heroes. And these guys that they go to the grocery store and they're there signing autographs. And they come to the games and they can cheer for them and they wear their jerseys and their kits and they want to be like that. And you're right, 2013, a youth soccer player didn't have that person here. Maybe if they were the fan of a European team, they had those heroes, but you can't see and touch and feel those.
Yeah.
And you could do that here because there's the accessibility. They have player appearances. They have meet the team events. They have, the team just put out a video for kids who made honor roll at CPS at the zoo, right? And they go there and get the medal. And you're walking in and Kevin Denke is putting the medal around your neck.
Yeah.
Or Roman Celentano's putting the medal around your neck. Or Nick Hagelin is doing that. Like, there aren't many other situations where that happens. And I look at it because, my boys obviously love these guys and love these games and, are inconsolable after a bad loss and, are bouncing off the walls after a big win. And I love to see it because of my connection, but I love to see it with everybody. When I'm walking out of the stadium and I see a family that I have no, relationship, I don't know them, but I see the kids with those big smiles on their faces and they're walking out. Like, that's awesome. And I think that's what everybody, whether that's Carl Lindner, whether that's Jeff Birding, whether it's Pat Noonan, Chris Albright, Nick Hagelin, and we can go down the list. We could be here all night, right? And talk about all of these different people. I think that's what everybody wants to accomplish. And I think that's what everybody's rolling in the same direction for, which is pretty awesome. But I think just having those opportunities to be like, I want to be Nick Hagelin when I grow up. Or I want to be Kevin Denke, or I want to be Roman Celentano, or any of these guys, is really awesome. And I think that's the differentiator of what makes all of this so special and why the sport is growing in the way it is and why there are better players. And there's going to be, some 10-year-old now who's growing up and cheering for those guys across the street who one day is going to wear that kit. And that's going to be a pretty awesome story to tell. And I hope I'm in that seat and still sitting up there and I'm able to tell that story about how, we'll have the picture and show the picture of the kid who was wearing the kit, 10, 12 years ago and then gets called in or gets signed to play for FC Cincinnati for the first time. And those are the stories that I love that, like, just pull at your heartstrings, that I think are what it's all about.
Well, Tommy G, Tom Gelehrter, I really appreciate you coming down here to PFF.
Thanks for having me.
Been a great conversation in a beautiful studio here. Tyler behind the glass, I appreciate you producing today. I hope we do this again soon.
Anytime.
Because it's a great conversation. And best of luck to you, to FC Cincinnati, the rest of this way. You're going to have a city behind you, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I hope they can bring it home this season.
You and me both. I hope to be really busy until December. Then I'll see you over at the Cintas Center and give you a high five there.
That's right.
And we'll go from there.
Absolutely. Tom Gelehrter, you can listen to him if you're watching Apple TV. Go ahead and you sync up that radio feed. That's what I always do. Go ahead and sync up that home radio feed whenever you're watching an FC Cincinnati match. You can hear him on the radio broadcast. Tom Gelehrter, this has been another episode of Paul Talks Ball. Make sure if you're watching this on YouTube, you go subscribe. Wherever you're listening in audio form right now, you subscribe. If you're watching on Fox 19, you go check us out on YouTube as well. That'll do it. Talk to you next time.